Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author and speaker.
Doug Tenaple, I'm the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Tweet groups.
I'm Victor Dweck. Joseph Carter, I'm the Mink Man.
This is Dave Baker from Forged in Fire.
This is Leah Morgan. I'm a comedian, and this is why you should never.
Don't ever.
Not ever.
Don't waste your time.
Oh, you really should.
Listen to those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
This is a great intro. We are doing our intro right now.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Reverend and the Reprobate. I'm the Reverend Lucas Pinkard, and with me is a guy who turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. It's the Reprobate, Danley Gibson.
Yeah, my mom is still out of prison.
That's
and
great.
I am still drunk.
Congratulations. That is awesome. I heard you hiccuping in the back, but it was weird because it was like in Pinocchio where you hiccup and then these little green bubbles just kind of pop up to signify that you're drunk, which is problematic thanks to Walt Disney. Green bubbles for drunkenness.
Well, don't worry. We'll slap a warning label up on there and call it a day.
So today on the show, we got a guy named Don Marshall, who you introduced me to via TikTok, and then also introduced me to him in sort of real life, in virtual life, via Zoom over this. So talk to us a little bit about Don.
Yeah, Don is the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy on TikTok.
Mouthful. Yep.
Yeah. So when I told you that my life was ruined when I had to delete TikTok, partially was because of him. But I'd gotten used to getting all these little chicken McNuggets of information of Lord of the Rings that I love. I mean, I love the lore. I love the world. It's great. And he does 45 seconds to 60 seconds of just obscure information on Lord of the Rings. So all the favorite characters you haven't heard of. There's plenty of other books that Tolkien wrote. I almost said Lorien, which is a part of the Tolkien lore, but Tolkien wrote. And he does these. He's got a huge following on TikTok. It's fantastic stuff. So he's on today's show.
Yeah. This is not a breakdown of the Lord of the Rings books. So there are people that are doing that kind of stuff. We're talking to this guy about what he does on TikTok, how he got started, sort of how he produces things, but also what got him into Lord of the Rings. We're not interviewing a Tolkien guy about Tolkien the entire time. We're actually talking to him about how he got his start. It's a really fascinating.
We fanboy about the Lord of the Rings stuff for sure, but
so there's some of that's in there.
But it's also about how he became. How he went viral, making 45-second Lord of the Rings clips,
which is kind of bizarre. So it's a really unique episode in that aspect. It's one that's a lot of fun and one that we had not just a blast doing, but we've been looking forward to because of the amount of knowledge that we absorb from this guy. And if you are looking forward to the new Lord of the Rings series that is coming out on Amazon, make sure you listen because not only does he have some really interesting opinions about it, but he also has a little bit of an insight to where it's going to go. So if you're curious about what happens there in the Second Age and you're looking forward to that, make sure that you stay tuned. Like, subscribe, ding that little bell. What else?
I was going to say, basically, if you like wizards and dragons and driving ships through dragons' chests and explosions and rings of power and elves, check it out.
If you love Harry Potter, you might like Lord of the Rings,
which is so much fun.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Reverend and the Reprobate podcast. Today we have an esteemed guest, which
very knowledgeable, very learned.
So I'm not on a lot of social media stuff other than like what I have to be on to promote our show, to do the stuff that I do up at the church. And one of the things that I've not figured out yet is the TikToks. And I say it like an old man intentionally, but you came up to me a couple of months ago and you were like, look, I know we both have this crazy Lord of the Rings fascination, and you've got to get into this guy, Don Marshall.
I think I started sending you little clips because Don's on at the moment. He can hear us. We haven't brought him on, but I send Lucas a bunch of TikToks. Some of them are just insanity, horrible. And some of them are, hey, this is a really cool video.
Most of them are horrible, and I'll watch like the first 30 seconds, but as soon
So you're watching half of it then?
Yeah, and then I'm like, this is garbage. I don't know why this is not funny. It's not interesting. It's just something that you wish you could see me react to. But then I got onto some Don Marshall 72 stuff, and I'm looking at him talk about the Silmarillion and what ends the second age of the Lord of the Rings.
El Caligon the Black.
And my wife's talking
If
to me,
I
and
said
she's like,
that
what's going
correctly.
on? I was like, don't talk to me right now. They only just sent me a Lord of the Rings video, and I have to watch it. And where you get to talk to the guy, the Lord of the Rings expert, the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy, Don Marshall. Don, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I got to say, in terms of titles that I've had in my life, obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy is definitely my favorite.
Well, it's hard to put in a lower third, but we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen.
Do you only know obscure facts and just what the Shire is? You're like, I have no clue.
Yeah, I you know what? I'll admit it here first. I've never actually seen the movie. No, I'm kidding.
Oh wow, that would be awesome.
Can you imagine?
That would be
imagine?
You're a purist. That would be. I would never watch Peter Jackson's abominations of the Lord of the Rings. Actually, his Lord of the Rings were good. The Hobbit, he was a little hamstrung on. But
Yeah,
that's,
where do you lie on that?
Oh, that's tough. Okay, here's the thing. Ready?
Okay.
And I'm probably gonna get some backlash for this. The Hobbit movies are fine, right?
Okay.
If you were to compare them to any decent, semi-decent Hollywood movie that's come out in the last 10 years, they're fine.
right.
But you get these people from Warner Brothers who are controlling everything and adding in, weird love triangles and weird B plots, and maybe Galadriel and Gandalf were a thing. I don't know, even though she's married. They're fine. Just ignore the bad parts and enjoy the movie. That's my take on it.
So as a standalone, if it wasn't in the Lord of the Rings, if it was well, that's another bad example.
If it was its own story, it would be really interesting.
I started going if it was just like Hook.
Yeah.
They just put it out.
If it was like Hook. Yeah, if it was its own story, disconnected from the Lord of the Rings, I think it would be fine. But I've always felt like Guillermo del Toro hamstrung Peter Jackson with what he did with the White Orc and all this other stuff that wasn't part of it. And then we all just got sucked into...
What happened with that again?
So Guillermo del Toro, if I remember this right, Don, you can correct me if I'm wrong because it happens often with both my congregates and the people that watch us online. Send me your emails. So Guillermo del Toro was the original director and kind of the creative force behind it, but he lost track of time and budget, as he often does, and got caught up with some other projects, which is why the White Orc looks so out of place, is because it was something that was created from the mind of the guy that did Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy. And so that's where it came from. And then Warner Brothers was tired of the missed deadlines. They were tired of everything going over budget. And they were tired of Guillermo kind of saying, well, I got this project and this project, and I'm kind of bouncing around because we're kind of in production now, and now we're not. And they were like, look, Peter Jackson, here is this hot mess that Guillermo made for you. We need you to fix it, make the White Orc work, because we've spent $100 million on it at this point, and go with it from there.
That's pretty spot on. I will say, I think I will probably, if we're assigning blame here, I will assign a little bit more of the blame to Warner Brothers for the concept that The Hobbit could be 3 movies is a little bit ridiculous to anyone that's read the book.
Yeah. Except for Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, I get you could potentially adapt the source material into 2 books, or maybe expand upon the universe, because it is such a rich history, and Tolkien has such a great universe that he's created. But yeah, I feel like a lot of it was unnecessary. There's actually someone online, I forget when, took all 3 movies and cut them down into one 4-hour movie that features only parts of the book.
And is it just awesome?
It's amazing. I won't.
Thanks,
I
the
won't,
internet.
So that reminds me of the Tomahawk order for Star Wars.
Oh, see, I'm a machete order.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It's the machete order,
okay.
But it's the same thing. And at no point do you watch episode 1. That's my favorite part.
You just never watch episode 1.
Yeah, it's out.
Yeah, and episode 2 is only 30 minutes long, because it's none of the cringy dialogue on Naboo whenever they're back in the desert and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So, Don, before we get into all of the Lord of the Rings stuff that we have questions about, and we'll put in our headgear and ask all of those here in just a few minutes, what took you, because we were talking in the pre-show, you said that you were a journalist. What takes you from journalist to viral video Lord of the Rings guy? Like, where is that career path? And how do I get onto that flow chart?
Yeah, did you go to school for that?
You know what? In a way, I did. But I will. Let me say this first and foremost: if anyone is out there, like, desperately trying to go viral, do not look at my channel as an example of how to do it, because this is a total fluke, and I am just still riding the wave of it. Full disclosure.
That's awesome.
So I was a journalist for 6 years. I was working the general assignment beat, and I was just, telling stories. I've always kind of considered myself a storyteller. I did speech and debate in high school. I was at part of my college TV programs as a college student. And then I got my first professional gig, and then I went on to another one. And the burnout is very real from journalism. I don't know where all of your viewers are from, but next time you watch your own local news, take a look at the age of some of the people that are there, because some of my experiences have been, it's only really older folks or the really young folks that are just getting in. So yeah. I personally was sort of starting to feel that burnout. And, I was away from home. I had moved away. And I kind of, I was working overnights. So there was no 9 to 5 to speak of. I barely saw my wife as it was when she was working. And so we kind of made the decision, like, let's, if we can, make a change in our life. And then, of course, COVID hit, and I was fortunate enough to get a job. And from there, I just kind of felt that itch to be like a performer or a storyteller in some way. And so in March, bored as most other people did, I downloaded this weird app that all of Gen Z was on. And I was like, that was funny. Next video, scroll. Next video, scroll. And then after a while, I started feeling that bug. Just put out a funny video, tell a joke, see what happens. And so one night, it was Thanksgiving night. I had just driven back from seeing my mother-in-law. She was in quarantine for 2 weeks, and so were we. And we were, doing everything safely, but we were exhausted, right? It's a lot of driving. So I come home and I'm like, I'm bored. I'm going to watch some TikToks. And so the first one I see that day is a guy by the name of Heston Horwin, who's now a great buddy of mine, actor, comedian, wonderful dude. And he made a video that basically, the joke of it was, he joked that Gandalf was 8,000 years old. And I went, Gandalf's not 8,000 years old. I know how old Gandalf is. I can tell people how Gandalf is. That's an obscure Lord of the Rings fact. So I made one video, and within an hour, I had 100 new followers. So I said, cool, I'm going to make a second video.
All right,
and that's
how old is Aragorn?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how Aragorn and Arwen are actually related. That was my second video. And then I had 100 more followers. And suddenly my first video had 10,000 views. And I went, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so that night from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m., I made, I think it was like 10 or 12 videos. And I woke up to 10,000 followers the next day, having absolutely no idea what was happening. So that's why I always tell people, don't ever look at me as an example of what to do, because I just did this by mistake.
Other than maybe throwing yourself into it, because I don't know the last time that I started something at 6 p.m. and just went until 3 a.m. other than sleeping.
Yeah, there was one night where we put up a video and then woke up and we had 2 followers that we had gotten overnight. So we know a little bit about what you're talking about. How did you get into so the story is fascinating of how you started to go viral, and a lot of it was putting content out there. There was some of it that Lord of the Rings is a known kind of commodity. There's a culture, a subculture that is around that stuff, but you were putting together some of the deep dive facts. But these are things that you kind of knew before you started this TikTok channel. So what made you, first, when did your love of Lord of the Rings start? And second, what made you dive this deep into, Lord of the Rings and into that world that Tolkien created?
I will say the short answer is good parenting and a little bit of heartbreak.
Okay.
So my mother actually introduced me to the Lord of the Rings in a very different way than I think most people are introduced. She knew that I really liked fantasy growing up. I was a huge, dork like that. She read us Chronicles of Narnia and all of the sort of classic children's tales of, knights in shining armor and all that. And the Lord of the Rings was just a little bit too violent, and the movies were about to come out. And I think I was maybe 9 or 10, and she was starting to read the books in preparation for seeing the movie. So every morning at breakfast, after she had read a chapter the previous night, she would come out to the breakfast table as my sister and I were eating, and she would tell us the story of what happened in that chapter. So I heard about Frodo and Sam and the Council of Elrond and the journey to, to Mordor, through person-to-person storytelling first. That was my first experience to Tolkien.
That's cool.
And I consider my mom a really good storyteller. So she introduced me to it. And then she said, hey, they're making it into movies, but they're a little bit violent, so we can't have your sister watch it. So while my sister was at dance class one day after school, she lets me watch the first half of The Fellowship of the Ring, and I was enamored.
Yeah.
I could not believe what these movies were doing. In my head, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because I was a very short kid. I grew up, I don't know if I've ever told anyone this publicly. I had growth hormone deficiency growing up.
Okay.
My body didn't make enough growth hormone. So I had to get injections every day for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And without them, I would have been 5'1", 5'2". So back then I was still
every day
very short getting the injection. So when I saw that the hero of this story was 3.5 feet tall,
That's my dude.
Did you have hairy feet too?
Not quite the hairy feet.
Well,
no,
that's good.
Thankfully, I've got.
So you're
feet.
close. You're close to being a hobbit, but
Okay,
not quite.
So how tall are you now?
Right now, I am 6'1", and I have all of those injections to thank.
Yeah,
dude.
You got screwed.
I have a complaint to file against my parents.
Said, Mom, where was my daily injection
we
of
hormones? We talked to a guy tonight who got growth hormone injections, and he's 6'1".
Also, is it too late?
Yeah, I will jump on a stepladder. I will look my mom in the eyes and ask her why it is that she didn't allow me to be 6'1". Okay, so you were enamored with this hero who was a hobbit. Your mom got to show you you watched the first part of the movie. Mm-hmm. So then, where do we go from here?
So then I watched the movies as they came out. I was lucky enough to see The Return of the King in theaters when it was released. Oh, yeah. And it just absolutely blew my mind. And I always loved the movies from then on. So in college, I had started reading the books. And then in reading the books, I was like, I should probably try the audiobooks as well. Loved those. And then I got dumped in college and needed something to fill the void. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, I thought, well, I really like a bunch of things. So let me go back into my childhood and see what sticks. And the two things that stuck were Pokemon and The Lord of the Rings. And this is a totally not related fact, but I have caught all of the Pokemon, right? In my Nintendo Switch cartridge is all 892, or it might be 96 at this point, Pokemon.
So this is Sword and Shield?
Sword and Shield, yeah. I have caught all Pokemon from the first to the 8th.
That's pretty awesome. I also played Sword and loved it, but I did not catch all 800.
I didn't get past Yellow on the Game Boy Color. That was the last one.
Oh yeah. Sword and Shield is fantastic.
Look, when they got
really
past
updated
Pokemon 151, I was like, too much to keep up with.
Yeah. Oh, you're missing out.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. But
it is.
Back to Lord of the Rings.
Anyway, back to the Lord of the Rings. So the other thing besides Pokemon that I filled my time with was the Lord of the Rings. So I reread the books. Then I read the Silmarillion, because that is my recommended order for most people is The Hobbit, the trilogy, and then the Silmarillion, which is kind of everything that happens in the first age, in the second age, and a little bit in the third age. But it opened me up to this world that I didn't realize existed beyond some of my favorite movies. I knew, like, in theory that there was like a backstory for Arwen and Aragorn and Elrond and all of these people, but I didn't quite fully grasp it. And then I started reading the book and I went, this is the Bible, but for my favorite series ever. And I read it like 3 times in a row.
I think it's a good analogy because you do need to take it, and this would just be my experience reading, and I read it in high school or maybe right after, but you have to take it slowly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Silmarillion, you need to take it passage by passage and reflect on it. I think my favorite part was Beren.
The Tale of Beren and Luthien is my favorite chapter in that book as well.
So I would love to hear you talk about that too, if we're at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
With pleasure. So for those that are unaware, the Tale of Beren and Luthien is a story about an immortal elf named Luthien and a mortal man named Beren who fall in love in the first age. And if you think that sounds like what happened to Aragorn and Arwen, it's exactly right.
Is.
The similarities are there. That has actually happened 3 times in Tolkien's universe of an elf and a man falling in love. And it's this amazing tale that I think Tolkien based a little bit on his own life, because he called his wife Luthien and referred to himself as Beren sometimes as like pet names.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Tolkien took a lot of himself and his own life and put that into this story. And there's, for those that have never read the Silmarillion, there's this overarching tale of the antagonist who is Sauron's master named Morgoth, who basically is trying to take over the world. And Beren really wants to marry Luthien, and Luthien's father says, sure, you can have my daughter, but you need to go to this antagonist's castle and steal one of the precious jewels. Then the jewel is called the Silmaril, which is where we get the Silmarillion from.
Okay.
And Beren says, wait, you're going to trade me your daughter for a sacred jewel? Because that seems a little fishy. And it is.
Right.
But it's this tale of their love and what they do together because they want to be together. So they work together to get this jewel, and they sneak into the fortress, and there's these enchantments and these friends they make along the way, and then the friends die, and then there's this talking dog named Huon that's there. And
I remember that. Yeah.
It is one of those stories that I think can kind of stand alone in Tolkien's universe. And if anybody listening to this wants to reach out and ask me to make it for them, if the Tolkien estate is watching, I absolutely will.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had hoped when I'd heard about the Amazon Prime series that this would be included, but it's in the wrong age.
It is, yeah. This takes place in the first age.
Maybe they mention it.
Maybe it'll be a flashback.
But yeah, it's got to. I mean, from what I remember, and again, I'm rusty, so I'm glad that you kind of jogged my memory, but it needs to be its own series, or it needs to be. It's a long story.
You're talking about the Silmarillion or just this one story?
Setting up the Silmarils, and then and then Beren sneaking over to steal it, and it's a really cool story. And they mention it in the Lord of the Rings. They keep mentioning the Light of I can't remember when. I think Aragorn mentions it on Weathertop, if I'm remembering correctly. Okay. He's telling him a story.
He does, yeah. He's the.
So look at that.
Actually, if you've seen the movies,
I'm a okay fact Lord of the Rings guy.
So not to use my own catchphrase, but let me explain.
Yes.
So those of you that have seen the movies, and I think it's in the extended editions or read the books, will hear Aragorn talk about it when he's taking the hobbits to Rivendell. There's the tale of Beren and Luthien, and it is the tale of an elf who loved a mortal man. And then I think in the movie, Frodo asks what happened to her. And one of my favorite line deliveries in that entire series is Aragorn looking out wistfully into the distance going, she died. And not knowing that Aragorn is in love with an elf at that point in the story broke me. And then figuring out that he's in love with an elf and then rewatching that series
it's much
after
deeper.
rereading Beren and Luthien.
Yep.
Like, if anything, reading the Silmarillion makes watching the movies even more heartbreaking because you get all of that backstory.
Yeah, it's a really difficult read though for people who have only been exposed to the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings to go and to look at the Silmarillion. I don't know if you're familiar with Diana Gleyer's work.
No.
So she is one of the world's foremost experts on the Inklings. And her and James Owens put together a book called Bandersnatch, which talks about the Inklings and the way that they work together, but also specifically the relationship between Lewis and Tolkien. And she explains in that the Silmarillion has to be read kind of like what you said, almost like a story-by-story thing. And if you just try to read it the same way that you do the Lord of the Rings trilogy or read it the same way that you do the Hobbit, you get to the point where I never got through it.
Yeah, I got overwhelmed.
Yeah, because
several times.
I tried to read it like, all right, well, this happened and this happened, and then my timeline's all screwed up, and now I don't know what's what, and I'm not like looking at the stories as individual stories. I'm trying to figure out where everything goes together, and I've just got the spider web in my head. So what did you do, or how would you suggest to our readers that they get through that the first time? Now that we've made it through The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings per your recommendation. Now we're into the Silmarillion. I'm 2 chapters in and I hate it. So how do I get out of like my I hate this? Why does anybody?
It gets progressively harder because The Hobbit
Yeah.
is an easier read. The Lord of the Rings is much longer and more difficult.
Right.
Silmarillion takes it up another notch.
And there's a lot of people that are, I think, in that. And I was a casual Tolkien fan, and so halfway through Return of the King, all the battles have ended. All of the closure that I wanted to have happened is already done. Now we're going back and we're like repairing the thatches on the Hobbit houses and all this. And I'm like,
bored.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done with it. I'm finishing it because I feel like I have to finish it. Otherwise, it's going to give me anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I do that and I start the Silmarillion and I'm thinking to myself, what? This guy got 300 pages into the Return of the King and everything he wrote since then sucks. So tell me why I need to finish the Silmarillion and how I should read it so that I don't feel like, Tolkien just lost his magic after Return of the King.
I absolutely will. That is a great question and one I get a lot. And I will sort of maybe ease your fears. Please know you are not alone when you say you have tried to read the Silmarillion and put it down and then picked it up and then put it down again. It is a hard book to get through.
But it's great kindling. Like it'll start a fire so fast.
Oh man.
I can't speak to its kindling. I've never done that quite yet. But I will say, take your time with it. And then once you get to a certain point, the plot does start to pick up. Not to shamelessly self-promote myself yet again, but there were so many people in my comment section on my TikToks that said, I tried reading the Silmarillion, but I just couldn't get into it. And so I started a book club on my Twitch channel where every week I read a different chapter and I stop every 2 or 3 paragraphs and I explain what just happened. And then every 2 pages, I take questions from my live viewers. So that's on my Twitch. And then the previous episodes are on my YouTube if anyone wants to, get a pre-start. Because I've had people...
I could do that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if somebody's spoon feeding it to me, I think like, okay, this is a much better way to absorb it.
Well, it's more like a mama bird because he'll read it and then he'll chew it up for you and then give it to you. So it's not just straight spoon feeding.
Now I'm less likely to do it, but because I like Don, I'll go watch it.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. And I think like in a way, I have found, and I didn't always think this before. I think the Silmarillion is meant to be read in like a group. And I know that's a weird thought.
Really?
Like,
well, it makes sense with the guys that wrote it.
Yeah,
because
like,
that's
what
they
I
did.
didn't realize it until I did it myself. All of the people that are writing these wonderful stories, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and all of them, they got together and talked about it and they digested it and they had that time. If you're sitting there trying to read a 300-page book that reads like a Bible and a history book simultaneously, you're going to sit there after 5 pages going, what?
Yeah.
But by the way, which one of them? I remember there's a story that one of them did not like the other's book. It was either Tolkien didn't like.
It
was that one.
Yeah,
didn't like
didn't
Lion, the Witch, and the
Narnia.
Wardrobe. Yeah.
He thought
This is
that
dumb.
he thought that it was contrived.
I mean,
Which is a very-
Lion Jesus can only get you so far.
Yeah.
But by the way, I actually have a question on this. If you were to rewrite The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, a different story completely, and Aslan had to be a different animal, what would you make him?
Oh. I probably have a few answers for this. For comedic effect, I would probably say a sea otter because that would be hilarious to me.
He just walks out of the ocean and
just very cute.
he's got a clam and he's telling them about how to fix things. And
You know what? I was going for comedic effect, but I think that's my answer now.
Yeah, all right,
Sea
well, there you
otter.
go, sea otter. I like it.
and he can splash the ice queen. Okay, anyways, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point about the fact that it's supposed to be read in groups, because that was one of the things that the Inklings did, was when they all got together, the guys that were poets got up and read their poetry, and they were all like smoking cigars and pipes and hanging around talking with one another.
Smoking something else when he wrote Tom Bombadil.
Which we need to get to here in a second. We've got a ton of fascination about Tom Bombadil, but all of this stuff
I
was
couldn't
meant
resist
to be,
interrupting, but please continue.
But all these guys read, as they would write their prose or their outlines, they would come to this group, and these meetings might last, 45 minutes, but they typically were lasting several hours, like sometimes 7, 8, 9 hours that all these guys are together. And they're reading excerpts from their stuff, and they're helping one another out and critiquing one another and doing all that. And I don't know of anybody that does that.
Dude, we got to
now.
up our game, because we get together and we just write jokes and do nothing.
Look, this is all I've got. I can't dig any deeper into my big bag full of nothing and pull out any more than what we're giving the folks right now. And you're welcome.
Yeah.
So
like and subscribe.
So that makes...
check out his Twitch channel. Twitch.tv/DonMarshall72.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that all makes sense to me, that it would be better to read out loud, and the Silmarillion in particular, because it's written in such a different way. Because the Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings in particular, but if you start with the Hobbit and try reading it out loud, it's so hard to do.
I did that. I read it out loud to my wife when we first got married.
Yeah. How far did you get into it before you stopped?
All the way.
You went all the way through?
Yep.
We got about
I did
40...
not. I did partially through the way Fellowship and went, no.
Yeah, because there's
I'm
so
going to
much...
shred my voice.
Yeah, and there's so much whimsy that he writes with, and so many different characters to keep in touch with. And it's like, if you aren't reading ahead of what you have to read out loud, it's easy to get lost into that. And I've got to commend you on the stuff that you do with the Silmarillion. It's so cool. You really bring these stories that to me, as I read it in the beginning, I was like, this is really dry. It's not the stuff that I fell in love with when I really liked Tolkien. But you do a great job of bringing it to life, bringing all the history and stuff forth. Thanks. And that brings us to the greatest character that never was.
Yeah, what the heck is the deal with Tom Bombadil?
Who is Tom Bombadil? What's a Bombadil? And why?
Because if we set it up, he's this random character in Fellowship that the hobbits make a detour through the woods. I don't remember what the woods are called, but they make a detour, and they come across this guy that's bounding around, Tom Bombadillo, Tim Bomb, I'm here to save the day. And then he saves them, and then that's about it. Yeah. And he holds the ring, and nothing happens. And then that's it. Tom Bombadil's gone.
And Peter Jackson totally ignored him.
I mean, to be fair, how the heck do you...
No, that's a good thing.
Did you just say thank goodness?
Listen.
Is he a god character? Is he just some random...
He was the whole reason that I bought the extended edition, only to be disappointed that it included 30 minutes of them putting on elf brooches. Like, oh great, yeah. How long can I watch them put this brooch on Samwise and give him lambus bread?
And the Mouth of Sauron. We got the Mouth of Sauron.
Yeah, but that was in the last one. I got the first one for that, and then after that, I was like, oh,
okay, back to Tom Bombadil. Let's focus.
Anyway, so Tom Bombadil, the great enigma of Tolkien's universe. So I'm probably gonna catch some flack for this. I am
Good.
so glad that Peter Jackson did not include him in the movies. Tom Bombadil doesn't make any sense. Tom Bombadil was originally inspired by one of Tolkien's children's playthings. The Bombadil character was a children's doll that Tolkien I think it was Tolkien's wife bought one of their kids, and then Tolkien himself saw it and said, huh, that's kind of cool. And then he wrote a short story about him, originally a poem for a magazine. However, he liked it so much, and his kids liked it so much, that he just put Tom Bombadil in the books.
Yeah, with Goldberry, was she a part of that too, or because I never really got the reference to Goldberry either?
What the heck is a Goldberry?
Goldberry's the fairy, daughter of the river fairy, or something like that. If that's correct, it's his wife.
Yeah, Don, what's up with Goldberry?
Yeah, what's up with Goldberry?
So Goldberry is the wife, but I actually have a fan named Ramona who came to me with this amazing theory, because Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are such an enigma in the Lord of the Rings universe, right? And Tom Bombadil, puts on the ring and nothing happens. Frodo puts on the ring and suddenly Tom can see him regardless. And he has this... Yeah. And he has this sort of like domain within the woods where nothing bad ever happens, and the trees listen to him, and it doesn't make any sense in like the continuity, unless a few theories. A couple of people think that Tom Bombadil is God, the god character in Tolkien's universe, Eru Ilúvatar, who you will find in the Silmarillion. A couple others think he is a self-insert character of Tolkien himself. Others will think that he just put him in there for his children's own amusement and maybe his own amusement, or just as an enigma, a happy plaything. However, there is a theory that I don't know how prevalent it is, but I love this one. It was suggested to me by one of my fans that in the Silmarillion, there are two trees named Laurelin and Telperion. One is silver, one is gold. And in the first age, the elves and the Valar use these two trees to create the day and the evening kind of. There's a gold light that expounds from one of the trees, and it creates the sort of daylight effect. And there's the tree that has a silver glow, and that sort of creates the evening. And then they mesh together, and it looks really beautiful. And there's this sort of twilight style thing. Well, Sauron's master, the evil antagonist of the Silmarillion, destroys the trees with the help of a giant spider.
The Shelob's it's related to Shelob, right?
Yes, this is Shelob's mother, basically. Okay. Ungoliant.
I don't like these people. Or these
arachnids. If you don't like Sauron, just wait for Morgoth.
Oh, Morgoth's so much worse. So much worse. Anyway, the theory that I love that this fan gave me is that the trees, Laurelin and Telperion, are the embodiment of, Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the embodiment of these trees, Laurelin and Telperion.
Huh.
That would explain why he has some dominion over trees, or he can.
So they destroyed the trees and smashed them down to people. And now they live in this little bubble where nothing bad happens.
Also, do you think Ents live in that area near the Shire?
Oh, 100%. I'm convinced that's where the Entwives are.
Okay. I think so too.
I don't know.
We don't know what
we've seen one. Yeah. Okay. So now you take something like that, this theory or the entire story of Tom Bombadil. How do you smash that down into 60 seconds so that you can put it onto a TikTok? What's your process for creating that kind of content? Because we're going to talk to you we've been talking now for 40 minutes nearly. We are just as aimless as cross-eyed puppies. Like, how do you take that amount of knowledge and smash it down into 60 seconds? So not only is it easy for people to comprehend, but it keeps them coming back for more. What's your process like for that?
So this is where I think my journalism skills really come into play, because I so often as a journalist wrote stories that when I voiced the voiceover and I included the sound bites from the people I interviewed, there would be 2.5, 3 minutes. And my producers would come to me and say, you have 1:30. And I went, but it's such a good story with this, and this. And I find that in every script that I write for these videos. But the thing that I focus on the most is what is going to click with these people. What can they immediately latch on to? So when I write a script, I usually write, I want to say like a 2-minute script with the full intention knowing I'll cut it down eventually. But my main focus is I want people who have seen the movies to know more and be inclined to read the books. I want people that have read the books of the trilogy or The Hobbit to read the Silmarillion. I want people that have read the Silmarillion to want to read the Book of Lost Tales or the Book of Unfinished Tales or all of the other plethora of extended edition books that exist because Tolkien's son, Christopher Tolkien, compiled all his notes and put it into a 300-page, basically, book of essays. And that's kind of how I do it. I figure, what is the most interesting thing that I can do in 60 seconds, and often less, because Tolkien wrote so much and I only have 60 seconds that my average watch time is not the full 1 minute. I have maybe 45 seconds for a full video. And in reality, I have 3 seconds to grab your attention. That's why I start every video with, hi, welcome to Obscure Lord of the Rings Facts. Because it's obscure, so they might not know it, and it's in the Lord of the Rings. So I've grabbed my audience in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
From there, it's just a question of what details do I think will these people find the most interesting from the perspective of, have they seen the movies? Is this detail for this video only going to be directed towards people that have only seen the movies? I've gotten countless comments saying this isn't an obscure fact if you just read the books. Well, guess what? Not everyone's read the Silmarillion, sir, ma'am. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that the process of this kind of stuff is so fascinating to me because I think somebody that hasn't done a podcast or created content before, whether it's a blog, a video, a podcast, or like you're doing with TikTok, and then even more what you're doing on Twitch, because it's so much more interactive and it's a more fun medium to do, but it's also that much more difficult. There's a lot of people that think you just turn on the camera and you're like, hey, here's the weird thing I thought of today, blah, blah, blah. And then there is, as much as it was kind of a sort of happenstance thing, sort of serendipitous that overnight you get these 10,000 followers and you just continue to move from there. It's also, you're putting a lot of work and effort into this in order to not just make your content something that people will have their attention grabbed by, but also that somebody that's watched videos 1 and 2 will want to keep coming back. So what do you do in order to make that happen, to keep people watching your videos so that they're, on your feed for 20 or 30 seconds? And then they're like, okay, well, no, I like this one. Now he's got me for a whole video. And then I'm like, what? I can watch one more 1-minute video, and an hour goes by, and now my whole brain, as I look like Peyton Manning's head, I'm about to explode with all the knowledge of the Cimarals.
See, this is why that you would never do well on TikTok. It's because your questions are 6.5 minutes long.
Well, that's probably. That's why we're not using TikTok.
Oh, well, you know what?
Don, please ignore Danley. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm telling his mom.
I will say I am very fortunate in that the vast majority of Lord of the Rings fans are good people, right? People that read and watch the Lord of the Rings are a certain type of person, right? I've always found that most of them are very kind and understanding and accepting of different creeds, races, cultures, religions, what have you, because that's what the whole book is about, right? If you watch the movies, it's about a bunch of people from different races coming together to overthrow a fascist. And if you read the books, it's about, groups of people coming together to join in this bond of fellowship. And I'm fortunate enough that the people want to know more, and I'm thankful for that every day. I have the very first video I ever made is full of comments that say, I just watched all of your videos. I've been binging for an hour. Thank you so much. And like that warms my heart because I know that I have been able to introduce these people to the world that I love so much. And I'm fortunate enough that if people want to watch my content, I have provided it for them, but that they are interested enough to do it.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I mean, the little community that you've built around your TikTok channel is really awesome. And we just want to encourage everybody again, if you like what you've seen of Don on TikTok, check him out on Twitch. The link is in the show notes. Please go do it because it's way more interactive. The stories,
especially the Silmarillion,
the stories are better.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I wish I'm going to commit to go watch that because I read it and my retainment, is that the right?
Yeah, sure.
What I retained from it was not a whole lot because of how difficult it was. So I'm looking forward to checking it out further. But I did want to ask. I want to know. I want to know about Alcalagon. If I said that right.
Oh, Alcalagon, yes.
Because I saw your TikTok and I only got 45 seconds of it. Mm-hmm. Right where. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Can you tell me about Alcalagon? As much time as you want to spend on it.
I'll keep it fairly brief because I know we've got other topics. But Alcalagon is where I grab people's attention that have watched Game of Thrones, that have played Dungeons and Dragons. Alcalagon really is the key to unlocking people's interest in Tolkien if they don't have any before. Because the hook is, hey, did you know that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote a story about a dragon that's the size of a mountain range? And there's a book about it, and he's featured in it. And the artwork is incredible.
That's so he's the size of a mountain range?
Yeah, so a small mountain range.
So like the Smoky Mountains then?
I encourage everybody to go on Google and check out the artwork for Alcalagon because there's different interpretations, right? I don't remember exactly off the top of my head the quote from the Silmarillion, but suffice it to say that when Alcalagon the Black, the dragon that Sauron's master Morgoth is unleashed onto the world, it is absolute chaos. So picture this, right? Let's to put it in perspective. Let's say theoretically, right? Aragorn and company are at the Black Gate, and they're like, let the Lord of the Black Land come forth, let justice be done upon him. And let's say theoretically, instead of the mouth of Sauron coming out, you get a dragon the size of 2 Mount Dooms coming out of the ground, just saying, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
So Alcalagon the Black is this dragon that Morgoth, Sauron's master, created in order to basically be almost like the ace in the hole, if you will. In the last battle between elves, men, dwarves, the Valar, versus Morgoth and all of his orcs and fire drakes and everything, Alcalagon comes forth. And I will spoil a little bit of the Silmarillion, if that's okay. If you don't want spoilers, maybe skip ahead
fine.
Totally
fine. Spoil it. If you haven't read the Silmarillion, it isn't because you haven't had the time to do it.
That's fair. Right? That's fair.
Yeah.
Alcalagon comes out and absolutely decimates some of these armies. They're forced to retreat. They're holding back. They're going, how on earth are we going to defeat that thing? And along comes Elrond's dad.
Belrond.
You know what?
Real quick for scale, how many Smaugs could you fit inside of Alcalagon?
Based on my personal interpretation,
just your
50.
Okay.
50.
Dang. Okay.
So he's like the little Matchbox card that's like, oh, this is a 1/64th scale. Like that is that Smaug and Calagon is the actual Camaro that you would like walk out to.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes. So Elrond's dad goes over to the Undying Lands and is like, hey, gods of Tolkien's universe called the Valar, hey, gods, we kind of need your help over here. There's a giant dragon, and Morgoth is about to just unleash all destruction upon us. So the ship that he rides over into the Undying Lands in is given the ability to fly. And Arundel, Elrond's dad, sails the ship through Ancalagon's chest.
Awesome.
I know. And that's how I snag people that have not read The Lord of the Rings or haven't read The Silmarillion. Like, isn't that a cool story? You're going to love this series. And Calagon is a great starting off point for people.
That's two awesome ways to kill dragons that Tolkien has come up with. One covered with gems on the bottom and one missing, and that's where they kill him. That's where they get him. And then driving a flying ship through the mountain-sized dragon.
You know what? I'm willing to say Tolkien was pretty dope. I absolutely love the deep dive that is happening here with the story of Ancalagon. What's the other guy's name? Morgoth. Are those guys? Are they going to play a role in the new Amazon series that's coming out? And what are or do you have any apprehensions? Because several of the cast members of the original Lord of the Rings trilogy have been a little tepid in their, response to people. And they're like, well, it's not really like what we did, and we're not really sure about it. What are your thoughts on it? And are these two just horrible fiends going to play a role? Because it sounds like they'd be pretty awesome to see on the screen.
So unfortunately, we will not see any of Ancalagon or Arundel and his flying ship. Those are in the First Age. The TV show, which is being produced by Amazon, it's okay. There's going to be exciting things.
There's still dope stuff that happens.
I don't want to watch
the Second Age has some dopeness.
It does. So the Amazon TV show, suffice to say that before they released the paragraph-long synopsis, I was cautiously optimistic. Once they released it, I will say right now, I am excited about this. Now, have I been burned by Game of Thrones in a way that I will maybe never get over? Yes. But I think there is a certain level of excitement that we can all get behind in seeing more of Tolkien's universe. Now, I do want to preface this, right? The TV show is not going to make you feel the same way the movies did. You are not going to walk away after watching the season finale or the series finale of this show going, gosh, this feels exactly like the TV show, because the Second Age is very different from the Third Age. The movies take place in the Third Age. The TV show will take place in the Second Age. In the Second Age, you've got a lot more of this almost kind of, everyone's going to make the comparison, so I figure I might as well. The Game of Thrones comparisons are going to be there. There are a lot of different kingdoms, elves, men, dwarves. They're all trading with each other. They're all relatively at peace. And I think it's going to depend on where they start the series, because the Second Age is 3,441 years long. There's a lot to work with.
Yeah.
But like there's the island of Numenor where Aragorn's ancestors exist, so we're probably going to see some of that. And there's a huge civil war that goes on there. There's the Grey Havens, where the elves live, that are basically the final stop before they go to the Undying Lands. Like, there's a whole universe to explore. So I think this show is going to be more about the universe that we explore rather than a group of friends going on an adventure, forming bonds of friendship and fellowship.
Okay, so it will kind of have that bouncing around sort of feel then.
I think so. Yeah. I think if they do it correctly, in my own, thought of how I would do it, then yes, that's exactly what they do.
I side with Don. If they do it correctly, they're going to do what Don says.
I all I want to know is, can we still get some grog? Are there still going to be orcs and elves? And if that's the case, then we're good. I'm in.
One of the things I think that's so attractive about Tolkien's world that he creates, that is one of the reasons that people still read it and love the books is that unlike a lot of the things that happen, and I read the Game of Thrones series, there's no clear-cut good and evil in it. Everybody's kind of got their favorite characters, but every one of the characters kind of makes you feel a little dirty, even when they're victorious. Like something happened that just makes every victory seem just a little slimy, and so you never really have anybody that you're really rooting for throughout the series. But in Lord of the Rings, these are the good guys, and this is the evil force that's going to be there. My biggest worry is that in Tolkien's world, it's like that. It seems like that through all of the ages. Even within, the Civil Wars and the things like that on the little bits that I've read about them, there was a part of the Dunedain that were bad people, which is what sparked this Civil War. Are we going to see, because it's an Amazon vehicle and because they are kind of going after this Game of Thrones feel, do you think that we're going to see that get muddied up? That they might take some of the good characters and try to put an edge on them that doesn't make it as clear-cut as who's good and bad in the series?
I will say this. The difference between Game of Thrones and Tolkien in the good guys versus bad guys thing is definitely there. But in reading the Silmarillion and in reading, all of these sort of things, there are good guys and bad guys, but the main sort of conflict is always against Sauron, who in the Second Age actually takes a beautiful form, basically like an elvish form, and calls himself Anatar and basically tricks everyone into thinking that he's, I'm a good guy now, it's fine. So if, just full disclosure, if anyone sees the name Anatar pop up in the Amazon series, red flags everywhere. That's actually Sauron. That might be a huge spoiler for some people.
Well, not anybody that's played Shadows of Mordor or Shadows of War. Yeah. Are we going to get to see Celebrimbor, do you think?
I think we are. And here's what I want to say, but it's going to sound a little pompous, right? If they do it right. Because if they do it right, it's basically based on anyone's opinion of the show. I happen to have very strong opinions about the show and what they want to do and what they should do to make it good.
It just so happens we share those opinions and all of us are right.
So I think if they are correct in my own personal thoughts on how they do this, we will see Celebrimbor, the maker of the rings. We will see Sauron helping him make the rings. We will see the war between Sauron fighting against the last alliance of elves and men. We will see the Númenórean civil war. We will see the siege of Mordor. We will see the foundations of Gondor. And sort of, I want this series to very much plant the seeds of my favorite movies of all time. So when I go back and watch the movies, I say, yes, I've seen that happen because they did such a good job. I understand why Minas Tirith is there. I understand why, when they mention it was forged in the fires of Mount Doom, that's such a big deal, because I've seen him forge it. That's my hope.
Man, I hope so. Are we gonna get to see Sauron? Sauron turn Sauron. Are we going to get to see that happen, do you think? Or does that happen at the beginning of the Third Age?
That happens later on. So depending on what interpretation you follow, because Tolkien changed his mind a little bit sometimes and just sort of changed when characters became relevant.
It's pretty dope.
Oh, yeah.
It is pretty dope.
So he
changed your mind.
You mean he's George Lucas?
Yeah.
No, that's not how the Force works anymore. It's mitochondria.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll never forget that Jabba the Hutt music scene. Anyway, this is a Lord of the Rings show. We'll invite me back for the Star Wars episode. It's okay.
Got it.
We will.
I think we will see. I think we will see a little bit of that, and I think here's my hope, right? I hope that all of these threads sort of come together so that when we do see this show, we don't go, it's not as good as the movies, because it's not going to be in that same way, right?
Right.
The mindset can never be, I want to watch the movies again, but in TV show form. That doesn't exist. The mindset should be, I love these movies. They introduced this world to me. I want to know more about the world. And actually, if I may, there's one thing that I have talked about with a couple of people on TikTok who are also Lord of the Rings TikTok creators, who are interested in the expansion of Tolkien's universe in terms of diversity.
Okay.
And Tolkien, the Fellowship is always, it's a bunch of white dudes. The guys who side with Sauron, the soldiers that side with Sauron, have dark skin, right? There's some, when you look at it from sort of a modern standpoint, there's some shakier points, right? And that's not to say, like, oh, it's a product of its time. You're applying a modern layer to an older work, but in doing so, my thought is, okay, yeah, we've got this Tolkien universe. Let's expand it a little bit. Let's make sure that we are inclusive to people of, different genders and different races and different creeds, to make sure, don't make the entire cast white dudes.
Yeah. That was something in, if you ever played Lord of the Rings War in the North, which was an RPG that they made. It was a lot of fun.
That was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Okay,
but you could, like, if you wanted to be a dwarf, he had various, skin tones and things that you could apply to him and things like that. So it's something that has been sort of introduced along the way, as that there were probably dwarves who were, different shades of brown all the way to like a very dark black. And then the ones that we got like in The Hobbit, where they're like me, that they go into the sun and they disappear, and you can see the entire cardiovascular system beneath them.
Well, see, elves make sense a little bit being white because they're always in the trees, and they never developed melanin.
Only the ones in Mirkwood.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which is where Legolas
and
is
Lothlorien.
from, right? Yeah, that's true.
But there's other ones. Yeah, I agree. It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure.
My thing has always been sort of the comparison of, if you can watch the Hamilton musical and you can see that actor playing George Washington, but he's a black man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you can look at Tolkien and go, oh yeah, cool. That elf has darker skin, or that human has darker skin.
Right.
It's fine. Just get over it.
Like, I don't think Samuel L. Jackson would have made a great Elrond.
but sure, the right casting choice. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but I am very excited for this show. I think it is the potential to explore part of the universe that we have only just scratched the surface of.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad it's a series and not another set of movies, because I really enjoy the long form storytelling that you can get from a series like WandaVision. If that had been crammed into a movie, it would have made no sense, or it would have been,
You've got to change up the storyline quite a bit whenever you do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't allow for the same style of character development that some of these long format series
or The
do.
Mandalorian, another excellent series.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited about it. I think it's the first thing coming on television that I've been really excited about in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was so apprehensive about The Mandalorian that it was hard to be excited about it, because I've seen so much butchered Star Wars. I was very happy with it when it came out, but that was a big deal.
Except for The Last Jedi. Hey, what did you think about The Last Jedi?
Oh my gosh, we're moving on. I know,
right.
I know. It was the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. So
he loves it. He loves it, and I give him as much crap as possible.
I think Rian Johnson tried to do something new with Star Wars, and that old men wouldn't allow it to happen. And that J.J. Abrams should have stuck to Star Trek. But that's okay. Those are my opinions, and if you guys want to not be right with me, then that's fine.
The fact that I agree with you makes it even better.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I really listen. I went out of that movie going, I don't know how I feel about this movie.
I misjudged.
And then I went back and watched it. I was like, all right, it's different, but I like it. Star Wars needs to evolve beyond the 1970s campaign hokey sort of thing that it is. It can still be that, but look at what The Mandalorian transformed it. Listen, if I have the choice, right, I would watch The Mandalorian over The Last Jedi, just in terms of just in terms of storytelling and the type of story that it's telling. But like, can you deny that shot where Admiral Holdo drives the starship through Snoke's ship and the entire theater goes silent was not one of the cooler moments in cinema history.
Well, it should have been Admiral Akbar, and he should have said it's a trap as he drove through it.
You're canceled. Wait, Don, this has been
Lord of the Rings / Star Wars talk.
Dude, this has been an absolute blast. At the end of every one of our episodes, though, we have a little segment called Controlled Rowdiness, where we ask some rapid fire questions to our guests. Just some kind of off the wall stuff. See what you come up with. So we're gonna ask you 5 questions. They cover a myriad of topics, and some are pretty basic. So
I'm ready.
The first one is, where would you rather vacation? Right? Would you rather vacation in Rivendell or the Shire if given the opportunity?
I get this question a lot. I would love to live in the Shire, but vacation in Rivendell. Rivendell's great, but it's tiny. The Shire is basically like its own little like state or province. And there's more to do there, right? There's bars, there's a nightlife. Sometimes Gandalf comes by and does fireworks. Rivendell, there's a bunch of libraries, and you can just kind of sit around and chill for a little bit. But if I want some change of pace, I'm going to the Shire.
All right, so live in the Shire, vacation in Rivendell. I like it.
Where would you grab a beer, the Prancing Pony or the Green Dragon?
Having been intoxicated at a bar with humans, I think being intoxicated at a bar with hobbits would be even more fun. So I go Green Dragon.
Yeah, I think they'd get drunk much quicker.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Who would win in a fight between Charizard and Smaug?
I love these questions so much, and you picked my favorite Pokemon. However, Charizard is only, I think, about 6 or 7 feet tall, so I have to go Smaug on this one.
Well, what if they were the same size?
Oh, Charizard.
He would kick Smaug's butt.
Charizard would probably use Fire Blast, which gives him an increased 20% damage, and then probably go for a Fire Spin, which, even though it has damage recoil on him, about 30%, should be enough because of the 90% accuracy to hit the place on Smaug that has a little bit of extra weakness.
Good answer. And by the way, who is Smaug's master? Does he have one anymore at this point?
Smaug does not have a master.
So he doesn't have anyone that can call him back to the Pokemon and put it in a different one.
But then in the Pokemon series itself, Charizard wouldn't obey Ash, and that's why Ash lost in the Pokemon League, because he tried to use a Pokemon that wouldn't obey him.
I just have that funny idea of Smaug return and then go Balrog.
I love it. I love it so much.
I think there's a crossover there.
There is artwork online. There's a crossover online between which Pokemon would be with which members of the Fellowship in the cast of The Lord of the Rings. It's wonderful.
Ooh, that's a cool thought. All right, what's
Very
next?
Interesting. All right, so you have to pick for the rest of your life. You can only read one series. Is it The Lord of the Rings, which seems like the easy get out? Is it the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis? Or is it the Shakespearean version of the Star Wars books that have recently been put out? Which one? You have one series for the rest of your life. Those are your 3 options. What do you go with?
Oh, listen, as someone who has read all of those books, the C.S. Lewis series is great and immersively detailed, and the Star Wars books are wonderfully hilarious, but I don't like rereading comedy books all that much, because if I do reread it and the jokes don't land, it's not quite the same. I prefer to go back and reread, so I gotta go Lord of the Rings on this one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and this is more of an obscure trivia question, but who wore the blue brooch that Tom Bombadil took from the Barrow?
Oh man,
we got him.
You stumped me on this one. Oh my god.
Truth be told, we don't know the answer either.
Yeah, we've seen some really interesting theories out there, but nobody really seems to know the answer. And we were like, for sure, Don will.
Oh, I'm sorry to disappoint.
No, not
No,
at
no
all.
problem.
I mean, if you came up with I don't know, so did the internet.
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Go for it.
Who is more powerful, Gandalf or Saruman?
Oh,
Okay. So I will give you this. Because this is one of those technically in quotes or like, well, actually kind of questions.
Yeah.
Excuse me, point of order.
Yes. So the way it works in Tolkien's universe is Sauron should be the strongest. He is the head of the order of wizards called the Istari or the Istari, depending on interpretations and pronunciations, and there's a lot of them. Sauron should be the strongest. He goes from Saruman the White to Saruman of many colors. Sauron gives him a little bit of like an extra oomph in his power level almost.
With the Palantir?
With the Palantir, he gives him, forbidden knowledge and all of that stuff and kind of makes it a little bit extra. However, once Gandalf dies and comes back as Gandalf the White, Gandalf says to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, I am Saruman, or Saruman as he should have been. So Gandalf the Grey is less powerful than Saruman the White or Saruman of many colors, but Gandalf the White is more powerful than Sauron.
Well, that was pretty close, but the correct answer was Dumbledore.
Yeah, you were so good because in their 6th year at Hogwarts, actually Gandalf and Sauron both got expelled. For playing tricks on Professor Snape.
And by the way, of course that's not true. Gandalf is the best.
Yeah, no doubt. He's the
not
best of
even
all the
a
wizards.
contest.
No, it's
not
not.
at all.
It's not.
Well-
It's a stupid question that has a funny answer, but Gandalf. Gandalf is the best.
Done. Well, Don Marshall, thanks so much for coming on, man. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to check out the links in the show notes. Twitch.
Don Marshall 72.
Yeah, twitch.tv/Don Marshall 72. And
Same with TikTok. Yeah, Don Marshall 72.
Yep, same on TikTok.
Y'all are awesome. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Don, for coming on. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me. See ya.
See ya.
All right.
Wow.
Don Marshall. This is an interesting interview for me because it wasn't one with somebody that we were I guess I don't want to say starstruck is the right way to put it because there have been plenty of those and we've got several more that are upcoming. This was one that really nourished my little nerd heart.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Because we got to talk about Lord of the Rings.
It did. It filled my heart up.
Yeah.
I feel very happy right now.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing the interview. Don has a really incredible insight into some of the stuff that goes into what Tolkien did, which gave him a greater appreciation for everything. And watching some of his stuff, I really see his passion come across through that. But also it is enriching in the way that it helps to interpret what happens later in the Lord of the Rings series when you look at the videos that he's made about the Silmarillion, or you understand,
especially the difficult
like these
ones,
little obscure people, and all that. It's really cool.
Are orcs former elves? Let me explain. Some of these things that I've wondered: is Tom Bombadil the god of Tolkien's universe?
Right.
Let me explain. He breaks down a lot of that and gets to talk about it. So I had an absolute blast. I look forward to the next conversation because I was not done. We ran out of time.
Yeah, we did, and that's always...
That may have felt long to those watching, but I was not done.
Well,
I could have done several more hours.
And I think that that's one of the cool things about guests like this.
Yeah.
Is that, we get to a certain point, and as we've matured as interviewers, we're like, you know what, this is the time to cut it off.
This is a good stopping point.
Right?
Yep.
We want more, but also we want our people to go check out the content that they're creating. And if, this new Amazon series that's coming out really starts to get rolling, if we do something like we do with our WandaVision stuff, and if you haven't kept up with that on our YouTube channel and our Facebook, we've been doing a WandaVision spoils, and basically we're taking all of the Marvel shows with WandaVision. I think Captain America,
Captain Falcon.
I
always say that because I always say that because I expect him to turn into
Captain America because he does in the comics.
Yes,
right. But we're the Winter
Soldier. It's Falcon and the Winter
Soldier
is what's coming out.
Yeah, so we'll be doing our spoils that with our good friend Ricky Pope, as well as some other special guests that come on. Check out Ricky's podcast, The Christian Nerds Unite. It's really awesome. But it would be fun to do sort of an after show about the Lord of the Rings stuff with the Lord of the Rings fact guy.
I would love to. I mean, like he said, it's his favorite story. It's his favorite movie. At least the trilogy. I say movie,
right?
But the trilogy is combined as his favorite set of movies. It's mine too. You know, it's I don't know what I would place above it, but it's at least top 3.
Yeah.
Not just because of the trilogy, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's one of my favorite. I remember growing up, and I almost told him this, but I wanted to hear what he had to say more. But I grew up, my dad had read The Hobbit, and he got me to read it. And then I remember him telling me, he said, just read The Hobbit. You need to start here, and then just wait.
Yeah.
Because it gets better and invisible, and that alone is awesome.
Right.
And I remember as a little kid going like, "Yeah, it'd be so awesome to have a ring," and like, "Oh, that's so great."
Do you think?
And
Tolkien
then
had all that
you
in his
realize,
mind?
I don't know, and all of the depth and the gravity behind that is amazing.
Yeah,
and then it evolves into this huge trilogy that is way more in depth than The Hobbit.
Right, because The Hobbit is like looking at Middle Earth through a microscope. Mm-hmm. And The Lord of the Rings is like actually pulling back and realizing what it is.
Yeah.
And the way that everything's, happened and all that. My biggest concern about the series is still, will it have, and Hollywood has a way of doing this, and we say Hollywood now. Now it's production because it's decentralized. Now you got Hollywood, you've got Atlanta, you get people that are making films in Dallas and Austin now that are all part of these larger studios who are putting out streaming content. My concern, and these guys are, it's a total New Zealand-based team, right? There's the people who are producing it are not known commodities in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Just the guy who's directing the first couple episodes in order to set the tone for it. Is that they have taken these stories of like good and bad, moralistic things, and they began to muddy it up, right? To where everything's relative because it's got to fit into that thing. And it's one of the things that Brian Godawa talks about, a guy who we might have on here in the coming months in his book Hollywood Worldviews, who he's a successful novelist, he's been a screenwriter, he's been a producer, the guy's been all over Hollywood and in all the creative fields. He's been a big power player. Talks about how that is intentionally what they're doing, and really what you're seeing in Hollywood now is the only movies that show this is purely good and this is purely bad are now in horror movies. That's it. That's the only.
Jason is just pretty bad.
Right. Yeah. Like he makes
Freddy Krueger bad.
Right. So
you don't have any sympathy for that character.
And like he makes the case.
That's actually it's a pretty funny
from a Christian perspective, especially, that the only movies, and he includes Disney movies and stuff in that as well, that the only place where you see absolute good and absolute evil is in the horror movie genre. And that it is the one where like the most Christian values are still predominant because God is still the one that drives out all the demons, right? That like it's always the people who are most moralistically pure that are the ones that survive and that are actually being chased by the most evil thing. And he has this whole, crazy thing that's behind it. And one of the things that he cautions a lot of people about is that when you see some of these things like what Tolkien has done, when you see it turned into a series, he says, watch it cautiously and with open eyes, because there is a big chance that they're going to take some of your favorite characters and some of the things you really loved about that world, and they're going to muddy it up in order to make it feel more gritty, more grimy in this kind of TV that sells, but that there's not going to be the clear-cut good guy and bad guy. And I think that's one of the things that was so attractive about like the Queen's Gambit is like the whole time, while there was never a bad guy, there was this ominous like Russian figure who was the world chess champion, and that Beth was constantly pushing in order to try and beat, and she hadn't beat him. We watch her go through all of these struggles, but we're always rooting for her the whole time. And then she finally gets there, and you actually do see the satisfaction of her beating that person. Well, when you look at Game of Thrones, when you look at things like Breaking Bad, that everybody is as great as those series are from a critical perspective, right? The critics raved about all of that stuff, whether or not you agree with everything that's in them or wanted to watch them or whatever.
Well, I mean, with Walt, specifically Breaking Bad, I would cheer for him at times, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, please die.
Yeah, like every character is an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And Tolkien never wrote that way. And so I'm still apprehensive about that, but I'm very excited about the show. I'm really looking forward to it. Don had a ton of really cool insight about who was going to be in it, who wasn't going to be in it, that Sauron in his angelic form is going to be in there. And if you realize that Tolkien is a Christian and you look at the way that he wrote him, is that there's this very sort of Lucifer, Satan kind of thing where he's angelic and he's beautiful, and then all of a sudden he is like the master of evil for the Second Age, and all of that stuff happens.
He was evil in disguise.
Yeah, that we're probably going to get to see a lot of those kind of things. And if they, like he continued to say, if they do it right, there will be a ton of stuff to talk about. And I think it has the potential to spark an interest into what it looks like to be creative and Christian at the same time, and how those worldviews can actually collide and create some really beautiful, really timeless art, whether through prose or through cinema.
Well, I hope we get to see Celebrimbor. And I did want to say, for all of the hardcore Tolkien, Lord of the Rings fans out there, I apologize right now for probably messing up several pronunciations.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I'm sure that there were several things that slipped by that I was like, okay, I've read this before on paper. I'm not totally sure how to say it or pronounce it, but I had a blast talking with Don about it. So
it was absolutely awesome. Don, thanks so much for coming on. Make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel, and check John out on TikTok. He's got a ton of TikTok followers, but he's trying to migrate that group over to Twitch so that he can do things that are a little bit more personal, do some Q&As and things like that. So make sure you check out twitch.tv/DonMarshall72, the obscure Lord of the Rings fact guy.
Yep. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a good review, 5 stars. All that stuff helps us. So whatever you're listening on, my microphone game is not working. Whatever you're listening or watching on, if you hit the like button, we'd appreciate it. And thanks a lot. We enjoyed filming this one for sure.
Laters.
Hi, this is Don Marshall72, the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy. And this is why you should never listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate.